Okay, we're in Tafmanal Chozer. I just want to finish something from last week. Last week we talked about glass, and I just want to mention we don't kasher glass. And the question is, what about in lots of places in tanks or in a pipe there'll be a sight glass? I just want to mention the question about that. But there's a glass that you can look in. So the question is, the thing is made out of metal, which is fine, but it has this glass piece in it, so how are you going to kasher that? Okay, so the question was asked from Rabbi Shechter, this question, and he said the reason why it's mutter is because of the din of us l'shtamish b'shefa, which means is the Rashba says that the only time you have to kasher something is if you would not kasher it, it'll make your food treif. So therefore you have to kasher it. Even if it's Eina B'Yom, or that Eina B'Yom wouldn't make your food treif, let's say Eina B'Yom or B'Yom. But if it's not a case of Eina B'Yom or B'Yom, just the amount of blue that's in there is so tiny that it can't possibly make your food treif, then you don't need to kasher it. His example, which is very similar to ours, is the example that's given is where there's a drop of food fell into a pot. You know exactly how much isser fell into the pot, and you know that it fell high into the pot, a certain amount of isser. So if you'd fill up the pot ever that high to get to that point, there'd be enough liquid in there to be involved because you know exactly how much isser fell into it. Okay, that's a case that's usually given for it. It's not the Rashba's case, but that's a case that's usually given for it. So in that kind of case, we say so the Rashba says, hey, it's us l'shtamish b'shefa. Every time you use it, there's going to be a shefa of heta to be involved with the isser. It's not possible to use this kli the way that'll make your food usher, so you don't have to kasher. The rules of Agol Kim don't apply.
But that's only going to work in a pot where it's mispashed b'Chozer. Let's say it's spray dried, right? Let's say a liquid hits that glass. It's not right? That area is going to be mamish also.
Correct.
That amount is going to be also.
But
in the totality of the product is going to be.
That's good. So we judge. Yes, that's true. It's not so. Usually in the l'shtamish b'shefa, it's by the time the liquid reaches that height of the pot, there's so much liquid that the bleed that comes out will be bottled. In our case, there are pieces that are going to hit just that spot and that are not going to hit the other spot. Okay, but we treat those things in most cases as we collect all that stuff together. The bleed that's in this entire kli is going into all the stuff that's in there. Okay. He's not so happy about that. But the bleed that's in the entire kli is being bottled into the food that's going through this whole process.
Why do we do that? Okay. You're talking about like a pasteurizer. We count the shefa and everything.
That's one example of it. Okay.
In my case, it was different. And that part, everything is awesome. In the 2,000 pounds I'm making it, those few grams are going to be bottled.
Right. So you
use that's bittul alive. That's not just smash of the shelf. It's bittul alive. It's kind of a bittul. Right. It's okay. Well, it's not the last maybe.
So let me think about that. You're looking at each piece separately. I don't think that's 100%. I have to think about that. Okay. We'll think about that side. Put that on the side. So the Rashba says that if it's also l'shtamish b'shefa, you don't have to kasher. The Machaber and the Ramah seem to pass like that. But the Achronim, the Kaz and the Shach are not so happy about it, and they go with a different shita that's only mutter to be. You can only not kasher from also l'shtamish b'shefa if the kli is also Eina B'Yom. That's or if it's list Talmud Kam. Okay, so in that kind of a case, then you could be samech on this thing of being also l'shtamish b'shefa. So what he said was, if you putting David's point on the side, you have a small amount of portion of the kli that's treif, that's glass, and we can't kasher it. So that small portion, let's agree that we can't kasher it. Okay, but in the overall kli, in the way that the kalim are used, that little bit of bleed that could be stuck into there is not an amount that can make the rest of the kli treif.
So actually, the case with the kli not dirty outside.
So we talked about it back then. There are lots of questions on this from the din that we had beforehand about rust and things like this. There are questions we talked about this way back at the beginning, maybe I don't know, Gimel or Dal, way back then, about how true this rule, the way we're applying this rule doesn't seem to fit with a lot of din over there about things that have a little bit of ban on them and things like that. Okay, now this din for plants is fine. If you want to be samech, it's fine in the plant. It's if you'd want to think about it for your own house, it's not. You can't do that. I think it would seem to me that you can't do that. You know, if you had a pot that had a little bit of glass, let's say on the top, a little thing, whatever, because if you say that it's only mutter because it's Eina B'Yom, it doesn't help you if you're cooking on Pesach, because we hold that Eina B'Yom is also on Pesach. So I'm not sure, but it would seem that it would not help you in your own house. If you're doing it in the factory, so you cooked in the factory, it was way before Pesach. The things that Eid B'Yom are mutter. Eid B'Yom is a factor. In your own house, I'm not sure. On the one hand, Eid B'Yom doesn't work on Pesach. On the other hand, we saw it in other cases in the Rosh Hashanah. We saw it in other cases that maybe for this kind of a din, Eid B'Yom does help you. Okay.
Yeah, they say that self-cleaning was not self-cleaning away from the father and father, is that true?
You weren't here last week. No, a few weeks ago we talked about it. Whatever. I think that it's fine. If you hold that self-cleaning is leaving gumless, and then it takes care of the grace for sure. Then you don't have to think about that.
Well, I'm not going to say. I don't understand. I mean, the self-cleaning, of course, the heat in the walls.
The heat comes out of the fire, so it heats everything.
Does it come from the wall?
The heat comes from the same fire that cooks your potatoes.
It only comes from the fire.
The same fire.
So someone the heat stronger than the self-cleaning, the heat from the fire?
No. So people might question whether, if you think that you're not doing Liban Gum, you're only doing Liban Kal, will that be sufficient for the glass door? And we talked about it in Halacha Chav Gimel that even if it's Liban Kal, it's probably okay. And Yossi even came back with other stars why I should be writing it. Okay. Right? Oh, man, I'm not sure if it's stars.
I remember that.
No, we have to think about that. Okay, fine. Halacha Chav Zayin. Okay, Shud Yosher, it's a tzolo boy, or face Pesach, spit that was used to roast chicken on Pesach, meaning you did not kasher the shud. The shud needs liban. You didn't do liban to it, and you just used one. Mutarn. You're allowed to use that food on Pesach. We had in Halacha Yud that there was a concern in those days that the salt would have chametz mixed into it, crumbs mixed into it. So during the year you roasted meat on it that had been salted meat, and the salt, no one checked to make sure that the salt was kosher Pesach. Okay, there was a concern that there were crumbs in the salt. So if you did it during the year, you used it for meat that had not been checked, the salt had not been checked, and now on Pesach you cooked a piece of chicken, you roasted a piece of chicken in that thing, without having done leap into it. So dinner said it's mutter, and the Rambam says miu eino hatrak b'diavad, it's mutter b'diavad. Okay, so the person forgot to do leap into this kli, and this is a very real situation, not the b'diavad part of it, but in places like Jewel. Okay, that want to broil chickens all year round. They make roasted chickens. So what happens is, comes Pesach time, they want to make them to Pesach also. Okay, so I once, Lenny Steiner from there, he once taught me. It was very smart. He says he told these places, he takes sets of these places. He says the rule he tells them is that you must be kosher Pesach all year round. He says because they basically are kosher Pesach. What are they putting to it? Just a piece of chicken with some spices. So the mashgiach makes sure that year round that the spices are kosher Pesach, which is no big deal. There's no special requirements. There's nothing in it except for chicken and a few little spices. So, and that's to avoid this problem. Because this problem is because if you don't make sure that you kosher Pesach year round, then you have to leave it to that, which is
so the kasher.
I don't know if you do, but he told me that the way he sets them up that they shouldn't need to cut. You talking about the spit with the broil?
I don't know. They call me because there's something to get spices for newlyweds.
Okay.
That they use. They want to know the Kashering. They want to know it's like mamish comments or kitniyas.
So I don't know. Maybe that's not for the broiler. Maybe not for this rotisserie. Okay. Maybe it's for another problem. But it could be. Okay. And that's how he told me it's supposed to be. Right. It could be it didn't work. Okay. Fine. I'm just going to finish it then because we're going to talk about this part. We'll go back. The spouts that used for wine barrels, you clean them off. And also the wood that used to poke into and these are both concerns that you might be dirty when you use them. So the thing that the spouts that you put, or the spigot, that's the word, the spigot that you put into the barrel, you might have used it. It might have been dirty. So it's similar to the Machaber said, a chash that there might be chametz mixed in. Okay, so this din, the Machaber says it's mutter b'diavad, and the reason why it's mutter b'diavad is because it's only a suffix if anybody uses something with chametz, and the amount of chametz in it was probably a small amount anyhow, so you're allowed to use it b'diavad on Pesach. So this din just says what it says. Okay, whatever it is. If you look at the Beis Yosef, he tells you, he says something. He says it here, and we'll see. He says it in another place also. That he says like this: how much chametz is going to be mixed into the salt? We're talking about that you might have roasted meat that had been salted with salt that had chametz mixed into it. He says how much chametz was mixed into it. He says the amount of chametz that's mixed into there is bottle, there aren't globs of breadcrumbs in this thing. There's a little bit of chametz, but it's mixing here and there.
It's not bottling the salt, of course, because you can see it.
We're not eating the salt. The question is the blias that come from the mixture of salt with crumbs. Yes, okay. The amount of it is less than shishim of that mixture, and the effect it has on the meat, and surely on the spit, is an amount that would be bought to shishim. So he says. So the Mechaber says. So I'm telling you, the guy forgot to do it. Now he's using it on Pesach. He says, but the salt that they use, they didn't use the chametz sticker salt on Pesach or the questionable salt on Pesach. They used the questionable salt before Pesach. He says. So if so, the chametz that was in there was bottled, and the shvut shouldn't be chafed at all. I'm talking to you about what happens if the guy forgot to do it. So I'm talking about wait a second, but what about the shvut altogether by itself? So he says, if you want to know about that, go look in Tafnim Zayin. Go look in Tafnim Zayin. It talks about the din of Chozer and and then you'll see what's going on. What's in the gate over here? What's going on in Tafnim Zayin? Over there. There's a machlokes like this. Chametz is a unique din, a unique kind of food that today it's regular isser, and today if it falls into a food, it's bottle b'shishim. Come Pesach, it's asher b'mashu. So the rules for bittul aren't the same all the time. Today the rule is that it's bottle b'shishim, and come Pesach the rule is that it's b'mashu. So the question is, there's a machlokes rishonim whether you say chozer v'nir. If chametz fell into food today, it was bottled today because it was shishim connected, and now I want to eat that food on Pesach. So should I say it was bottled with shishim, so it became mutter? Now comes Pesach, it stays mutter. Or should I say no? Now, but on Pesach it's b'mashu. On Pesach, if we'd follow these rules, this food would be also because the amount of chametz that was in there is a mashu. So a mashu who is also okay. That's a machlokes rishonim.
So what exactly is the bittul over here? Initially, when the chametz is in the salt, went into it wasn't bottled in the salt.
Sure.
It's visible.
No. Wait a second.
In the blias, it's bottled.
Well, no, in the blias, but it's blias. There's some blias somewhere in the spit of chametz, someplace. We don't know where it is.
That's bottled.
So that's what we're talking about. Bittul of spots. This spot is bottled, and the rest of the spots.
If you want to decide, was there blias of chametz in the spit? Bittul will tell you there were no blias of chametz in the spit. Right?
That's correct. The blias are going in together. The blias are going in. The time that's transferring into the spit, does it taste like chametz or does it not?
The truth is, chametz could have directly touched the spit.
I'll tell you what.
And the spot there that has chametz.
It should even be bought chad betray. If that's what did, are we going to say there was chametz touching the spit? Chad betray will tell me no. There was no spot of chametz touching the spit.
Why?
Because there was raw salt. You didn't done.
The piece of salt all over the thing is a piece of chametz somewhere on it. And that's chametz. That's a piece of chametz not bottled because you can see it.
Is not bottled. I want to not understand, did you get bliss from that stick of chametz or not? What touched the chametz? What touched the spit? Was it salt or was it meat? What were you, or chametz?
On the spit, no, not on the chicken.
Right, on the spit. I'm talking about the spit.
So you think one spot is bottled on the spot?
Not one spot. I want to what touched this spit. What touched the
spit? You want to go as basaruba or something else. You want to say
that's chad betray.
It's not chad betray. You go basaroy. Not bittul
train. That's based on chad betray. You could call it Polish, whatever.
Okay.
We
disagree that, so I don't think they can look at it like that. But okay, we're seeing it. Okay, we will argue that your day decided on afterwards. Okay, but we're seeing it as the bleed that's going into there is an amount that has chametz that was bottled in it. Okay, for whatever reason. If it'll make you feel better, the salt is on the outside of the meat. Okay, it'll make you feel better. Anyhow, whatever it is, the bleed going in there is bottled. So should we say it was bottled, it's finished?
Well, who's having this discussion? We have to explain what it tells you.
This is what the Mishnah is talking about. It says, so should we say, so it's gone? Or do we say that's Chozer v'nir? On Pesach, the rules are different. The rules now make...
You don't pass in Chozer v'nir.
Well, so the Mechaber says, go look over there. You'll see what the din is over there. Come, if you look over there, so in the Shulchan Aruch it brings both days. It says, the chametz that's bought before Pesach is not Chozer v'nir. V'yesh cholkin or v'yesh machmir. I've got the words that he says. Okay, the Ramah says no, we're makel, that there's no Chozer v'nir. Okay, so that's why you'd say, oh, we don't have Chozer v'nir because you're an Ashkenazi. You think we're not Chozer. But the Mechaber is still over there.
The Ramah is machmir. The Mechaber is makel.
Rega, we're getting to Rega. The Ramah says the Ramah says there's no Chozer v'nir. Okay, that's the Ramah. The Ramah says except Yovash. We're getting to Yovash in a second. Okay, the Ramah says we're makel. Okay, so now how do I say this? Okay, so now I'll ask you a question like this: the Mechaber, as it stands, we know what the Ramah. What does the Mechaber hold about Chozer veneer? The Mechaber says chametz that's bought before Pesach is not Chozer veneer. V'yesh chokin or v'yesh machmir. Okay, so the simple thing you look at it is there's a rule that when the Mechaber says 2 days, if we mentioned this, if he says the 2 days yesh like this, v'yesh like this, then you go with the second day. And if he says just 1 day of Bistam and then v'yesh chokim, then you go with the first day. Because he said that one Bistam. Okay? It pumped, you'll hear in a second why, but I was looking at a Knesset Agdel. No, usually look there, but I looked at Knesset Agdel, and he in fact says right on that day. He says the Mechaber is going like the first day, because that's how you say it. He said it Bistam like that day. So you say the Mechaber holds that Chozer veneer is mutter. Okay, so now I have another question. So then, maybe you should say the same from Arden also. What does the Mechaber say in Arden? Shvud Yashin, that you would toil the food in this thing. So what's it in? The chicken is mutter, but on Pesach. Okay, why is the chicken mutter? Because the Mechaber says it's totally not din of Chozer veneer. So the Mechaber says here that this food is mutter b'diavad on Pesach means because he holds the chametz is not Chozer veneer. So maybe you could think to bring a raya from Arden also that Mechaber holds that chametz is not Chozer veneer because he says. In this case, the din is that it's mutter. He's talking about eating the food on Pesach. He says that the food is mutter. Okay, so you might think like that, except that in our case, there's an extra thing to add on, which is it's only a suffix. Okay, so it's not, you can't bring it right from our case, really, because in our case, it's a suffix. We don't even know that there was chametz mixed into it. It's just salt that may have had chametz into it. It's not that we know there was chametz mixed. It's a suffix. And that suffix plays roles, so you can't necessarily bring it right from here. Okay. Then there's another possible right to it, and we're going to get back to Arden in a second. In Taf Mem Beis, in Halacha Daled, the Mechaber talks about if you have this medicine, it's called, in here it's written as Triach, it's called Theriac, Theric, okay, Theriac, which was a medicine that was used then, a mix of all kinds of things. So the Mechaber says if you have this Triach or Theriac that had chametz mixed into it, you're allowed to keep it on Pesach, but you're not allowed to eat it. You're not allowed to eat it because of Kashering. So the Ramah says on that, but you should just know, you'll see in Taf Mem Zayin, okay, I'm going to hold in this case. I'm sorry. Put that on the side. I'm sorry. Now, there's a different question, which is, in the din before the Mechaber brings this halacha about whether chametz is Chozer veneer or not Chozer veneer, the Mechaber says a different case. He says, what happens if you found at Erev Pesach a chicken that had a kernel of wheat into it? You had cooked the chicken and it had a kernel of wheat. You found a kernel of wheat into that, okay, which Kineret was a common child then, because the chickens used to eat food. And you open up your chicken and there was chametz in it. So then he says, if you heated up the chicken on Pesach, when you found the kernel not before Pesach, you found it on Pesach. You found it on Pesach, and the chita was still in there, and you reheated that food. So then it makes the food treif, because the chita that's in there gives a mashru of tam into the chicken. So chametz on Pesach is a mashru. So you warm up the chicken on Pesach, you're going to treif up your chicken because of the chita that's in it. So the Mishmur says, it's coming from Magen Avraham. The Mishmur says that that's only true if you heated it up with the chita inside of it. What would be if the chita had not been inside of it? I mean, you discovered the chita before Pesach, you took it out, and then you warmed up the piece of chicken on Pesach. That chicken that had the chita in, you warmed it up on Pesach. He says that would be mutter.
It was already warm before Pesach too.
It had been cooked before Pesach, and now come Pesach. I'm sorry, I don't know if that's true.
If you wasn't doing this, then there was the shayla. You took the chita was cold.
Right. I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. Yes, correct. The chita was in before Pesach. Yes, of course.
It was not so.
And now you took off the chita. Now you reheated it. So the Mishmur says that's mutter. He says not only according to people who hold that there's no Chozer veneer. He says, but even according to those who hold that there is Chozer veneer on Pesach, we only say it. The only shayla about Chozer veneer is when there's the end, when there's chametz mixed into a food. There's actual chametz mixed into a food that was bottle. Now we can say Chozer veneer. But if it's only tam, it's not the end. Everyone agrees that there's no Chozer veneer. Just for tam that was bottled, everyone agrees that there's no Chozer veneer. Okay, that's what the Magen Avraham says, and he says that the Sharatzin brings it from the Earl Shabbos. So I went to look at the Earl Shabbos. That's why I was at the Knesset Hagdolah, because the Earl Shabbos says this, and he says, and Ein Knesset Hagdolah Mazur Tinyana, which is the Shari Knesset Agdala, which I can't find. I was trying to find this. I only found the real Knesset Agdala, and the real one doesn't talk about this. He just says the other thing about the Mechaber. So I don't know what the reason is. And the Pri Megadim is, to me, looks like an obvious question. He asked it over there, that, what are you talking about? He says, look at our din. In our din, the Mechaber said, the Beis Yosef said, that this din of the shlut that had been used for salt is a shayla of Chozer veneer. What's about a shayla of Chozer veneer? There's no be'en anymore. It's a clean spit that has blias from chametz in it. It doesn't have any be'en. There's no be'en in this thing. So he says, what the Beis Yosef says, he says, you know what? The Beis Yosef, even on this case of the chicken, says that. The Beis Yosef on the case of the chicken, okay, we have to Shulchan Aruch that case first of the chicken, and then the shayla of Chozer veneer.
But it's fried, it's not bottled because it's clean.
No, it's blias. We're not talking about be'en. There's no be'en of chametz in my food today. The shayla, the chametz, the theoretical chametz that's here is balua. It's a tam. That time we're talking about should it be Chozer veneer or not. What are you talking about Chozer veneer? So obviously you see this Chozer veneer on a blia also, or even on a tam, not on a be'en. Doesn't have to be it. He says, and this we have the din of this thing about the chicken as halacha gimel, and then halacha daled is the din of what is the Chozer veneer or not. Okay, but that's not the way it's set up in the Beis Yosef. In the Beis Yosef, it's the other way. What it is it starts off with what we have as halacha daled is the Chozer veneer, and he says these are all the people who say that Chozer veneer is mutter. Okay, that's what they say. All these people say Chozer veneer is mutter. Then he says, and that's why in the case of the chicken, if there was no chit in it, you're allowed to use it because there's no Chozer veneer in Pesach. That's what he says. But you should just know the Rambam and others hold that there is Chozer veneer in Pesach. Okay, that's the next paragraph afterwards. So the Beis Yosef over there is also very clear that the Chozer veneer is a shayla by blias also. That's how he talks about it. He says all these people hold Chozer veneer is mutter, and that's why this chicken is mutter. This kind of case of a chicken is mutter because of Chozer veneer. And some people hold that it's usher, and some people hold that it's usher. That's why other people hold that it's usher. And so in the Shulchan Aruch, the halacha is the other way. But I don't understand. The Pri Megadim says he doesn't understand. How could you say that in cases where we're only talking about a blia or a tam of chametz, then there's no shayla. Then everyone agrees that there's no Chozer veneer. He says when the Beis Yosef in both of these cases says that it is even by that case. He doesn't give an answer, or not that I understood. I mean, there's a lot of just hints and things in Pri Megadim. So anyhow, I didn't understand the answer to this question. I don't know what to say. That's why I was looking for the Shari Knesset Agdala to see maybe he explained himself better. Because the Aruch says it just like straight out. And the Magen Avraham also says it a bunch of places. He makes a point of it. He says no, on things that are blias, there's no just tam. There's no shayla of Chozer veneer. Everyone agrees there's no Chozer veneer. Okay, and the Mishnah Berurah said over there. So I mean, we'll just take it as is. It's coming from just hard to understand where it's coming from when the Mechaber. When the Beis Yosef explains it, he seems to see pretty clearly that the shayla of Chozer veneer even applies to things that are blias. And one of those cases, that our din is one of those cases. Okay. There's also a shayla about what I was saying before about the triak. That in the case of the triak, the Ramah says that if the chametz was bought before Pesach, he says it's not a problem. He says the chametz is mutter if it was bought before Pesach. You'll see later. You'll see in Tav Mem Zayin that there's no Chozer veneer. Okay. So, Frank Mishpur, a question. He says, really? There's no Chozer veneer? It's not true. Go look. If you look at the Ramah, who says that din about Chozer veneer, he says we hold that chametz the Pesach is not Chozer veneer, except in one case. That's what David said before. Except in one case, which is if it's yavish b'yavish, then there is Chozer veneer. So he says in this triak is Chozer veneer is yavish b'yavish. I don't know how he knows that, but he says the case of triak is yavish b'yavish. Since it's yavish, right? Maybe again. I mean, we don't know what it is. Right? We're talking about right. I agree, but he says he just assumes. He says so it's yavish b'yavish. He says so why is the Ramah being makel in the case? Okay, so now for starters, that would explain why the Mechaber is machmer. You can't bring a raya from the Mechaber because he held it in the case of yavish b'yavish. Okay, but the Ramah he says how could the Ramah be makel when it's case of yavish b'yavish? He leaves it as a kasha. He just leaves it as a kasha. The Chazanish answers that to say we would only say Chozer veneer when if today the bittul was happening, the food would be asaf b'mashu, as if it would asaf b'mashu. But the triak is a food that's not edible. Okay, that's the point of this din, is that this triak is not a food; it's really inedible. It only becomes, so to speak, edible if it's a din of akshrei. If I eat it, I'm showing that I consider it a food. But by itself, the bittul of the isser into the heter, the chametz into the heter, doesn't make it usher. So Chozer veneer makes sense when you say If the bittul would be happening today, it would make the food usher. Okay? If the bittul would happen on Pesach, it wouldn't make the food usher. It brought them to things that are not edible. So the bittul as it is today, it's not a shiloh. It's not really a shiloh. It's not a shiloh chozer v'nir. Now I don't understand.
It's hard to understand.
Because
Because the bittul would work. Then so then
that's a good question, and I don't understand because the Ramah says that's an example of chozer v'nir. The Ramah says you'll see later on that we're making about chozer v'nir. So he's saying as if it doesn't depend on chozer v'nir. The Ramah says, "Oh, come on, it's tough to understand. You'll see the yesh chok in the matir if it was bought before Pesach." So what are you saying? What has to do with anything? The Ramah is saying so much. Okay, I want to mention when I said this thing about Yavish, it makes it more real, at least in my mind. To understand, the Ramah says we're machmir by Yavish. Okay, there's a real example of Yavish that has to do with this thing. It's not so gay anymore, but it used to be, which was the baby food, the rice cereal in Pesach. It's flakes. It's not a powder. It's like flakes of dried rice, cooked and dried rice in these flakes. And each piece is its own individual piece. It's not kemach b'chemach. It's not flour that's considered a full taruvus. The pieces are each individual piece. If you pour out the box, the pieces all come out on the table. They're each individual pieces. Okay, so that's a bit of taruvus of yavish b'yavish. That's solid. They're not. The pieces don't get mushed together. Each one sticks out by itself.
Even in this final baby food.
After you mix into water.
Oh, you take it.
After you mix into water.
The customer takes it and mixes it into water.
Oh, well, yeah. You buy a box of flaked. It's flakes of baby food, of this dried out rice or other grains. Excuse me. And when then you mix it with water and it turns into a mush. The baby eats it as a mush. But when you buy it, it's in a box of flakes. And there used to be a chashash. They say that nowadays it's not such a chashash. There used to be a chashash. The same companies make oatmeal cereal also, and that the machinery can't be 100% clean or 100% perfect to make sure there's not one piece in there. So if one piece of oatmeal cereal gets into your rice cereal, excuse me, that's a taruvus yavish b'yavish. So for regular Isser, if this would be a problem with style of regular Isser, so it would be possible.
You could tell which is
you can't tell which one is oats and which one is rice. You can't tell, but the pieces are not mixed into each other in a way that they are one big glump of like kemach. These are actual individual pieces. You can pull out one piece at a time.
Because we as a remote like called the polish. When you buy a box, there's no reason to presume there's oats in this particular box.
Okay.
It's called the polish before Pesach.
So you're saying if I have the whole huge vat of oats there, right? So the question is, but my box, it's a different set of rules. I don't remember if for that. I think you're right that for that those things are possible for Pesach. There's usually things that are possible.
You could say that roiv of this size that comes out of this pile. There's no oat kernel.
Yeah.
It's 5,000 pounds. And in the time that you put 2,000 pounds, so there was 20 kernels.
Right.
Right.
There's not that much. They say that nowadays the companies are so concerned about allergies that there isn't any. That they're from an allergen perspective don't want oats, and rice is considered like a completely safe food that no one's allergic to. So they're like super careful about it to not mix in any allergens. Okay, so maybe it's not a chashash. There are other chashashs. Just as an aside, for the rice food, there's other chashashs, the enzymes that they use to make the rice cereal. Okay, that's a different chashash for Pesach. Not for now. But for this chashash, at least it's an example. You can try to picture in my mind. It helps me understand this din of yavish and that kind of case. Okay. One more thing, which is really a lead-in for next time, which is the Taz says we're saying that chametz. The Taz over here is this question. He says you're saying that chametz is not chozer v'nir. He says how could chametz not be chozer v'nir? Don't we know that we paskin that chametz is isur bala? Didn't we paskin that chametz is isur? So if chametz is isur, then can't say chozer v'nir. Then you have to say chozer v'nir. Okay, and his answer, just as I was saying,
why? Because
I have no idea. We'll talk about 1 second. But his answer is that the Taz says that we don't really pass the chametz. We're not sure that chametz is isur bala. Chametz, we're machmir that it's isur bala. He says, but we're not there when there's other things to be mitzaref. We're samech on the sheet of the chametz is a terabala, and therefore in our case, we do other tzirufim because here it's a suffix. We don't even know if there was chametz in the food, so therefore you can be maker. Okay, which is what he's saying might make sense for the Ramah, because Ramah holds the chametz is isur bala, but he still holds on to the other sheet that it might be hetera, because chametz, whether chametz is isur bala or hetera bala is the flip side of another question. Whether you follow, we talk about this all the time. Roiv teshmishay, me teshmishay. Those two sheetas go. You have to be make like one of those things. They answer a kasha, so you have to be make like one of those. So the Ramah says to be machmir for both. So it means that he's not sure which is the right answer. Well, he's willing to be, at least you could consider within the Ramah that he's not sure which is the right answer, and you could be mitzaref and kulas to make it. But Machaber says chametz is isur bala, and he takes the kula of roiv teshmishay, so he seems rather confident that chametz is isur bala. He's saying chametz is isur bala l'kula, so to speak. So it's harder to say than the Machaber. Okay, but the question that he's saying is that it's a pretty close question, and I don't know how to really answer the taz. What is chametz being isur bala has anything to do with chozer v'nir? Chametz in isur bala means that even before Pesach, chametz is isur. Okay, that's fine. But the rules for bittul before Pesach are that it's bought b'shishim, and the rules on Pesach is that it's asur b'mashu. What about, let's say, an erev Pesach? An erev Pesach after chatzos. What's it? Chametz is asur. It's not asur b'mashu. So just because chametz is asur doesn't mean that it has to be b'mashu. And if it's asur and it's bottle, so then it stays bottle. Oh, that's the shayla. Does it stay bottle? Does it become not bottle? So he says, what does it have to do with chametz is hetera bala or isur bala? Let it be isur bala. Okay, so it's isura. Why does that mean you have to say chozer v'nir? He does. I'm saying what the connection is between the then what the connection between the two things is. I'm not sure. I don't have a great answer to explain you what the Taz says. I'm mentioning it aside from just the point and the kasha. This is an introduction because the next din is all about whether this din, well for us is the next din is all about whether this din that chametz is isur bala, what does that translate into? Okay, we're going to see here whether it goes into not or not and things like that. Other kinds of shaylas, does that connect to other dinim? That's what the next halacha is about. That whether chametz being isur bala, what effect does that have on some other things that depend on heter nisr, like not or not? Okay, let's